South of the border, west of the sun, by Haruki Murakami. Chapter 4. The first girl I ever slept with was an only child. Like Izumi, she wasn't exactly the type to turn any heads. Most people would hardly have noticed her. Still, the first time I laid eyes on her, it was as if I were walking down the road one afternoon, and a silent bolt of lightning struck me smack in the head. No ifs, ands, or buts. I was hooked. With very few exceptions, typically, beautiful women don't turn me on. Sometimes I'll be walking down the street, and a friend will nudge me and say, "Wow, did you see that girl?" But strangely enough, I can't recall a thing about this supposed knockout. And gorgeous actresses and models don't do a thing for me. I don't know why, but there it is. For me, the boundary dividing the real world and the world of dreams has always been vague, and whenever infatuation raised its almighty head, even during my early teens, a beautiful face wasn't enough to get me going. I was always attracted not by some quantifiable external beauty, but by something deep down, something absolute. Just as some people have a secret love for rainstorms, earthquakes, or blackouts, I like that certain undefinable something directed at me by members of the opposite sex. For want of a better word, call it magnetism. Like it or not, it's a power that ensnares people and reels them in. The closest comparison might be the power of perfume. Perhaps even the master blender himself can't explain how a fragrance that has a special magnetism is created. Science certainly can't explain it. Still, the fact remains that a certain combination of fragrances can captivate the opposite sex, like the scent of an animal in heat. One kind of fragrance might attract 50 out of 100 people, and another scent will attract the other 50. But there are also scents that only 1 or 2 people will find wildly exciting. And I have the ability, from far away, to sniff out those special scents. When I do, I want to go up to the girl who radiates this aura and say, "Look, I picked it up. No one else gets it, but I do." From the first time I saw this girl, I knew I wanted to sleep with her. More accurately, I knew I had to sleep with her, and instinctively I knew she felt the same way. When I was with her, my body, as the phrase goes, shook all over, and my penis got so hard I could barely walk. I'd probably felt the stirring of this kind of attraction, a prototype of it with Shimamoto, but I was too young to recognize it as such, or even to give it a label. When I met this other girl, I was 17, a senior in high school, and she was 20, in her second year of college. Of all things, she happened to be Izumi's cousin. She already had a boyfriend, but for the two of us, that was beside the point. She could have been 42, with 3 kids, and a pair of tails growing out of her backside, and I wouldn't have cared. The magnetism was that strong. I couldn't let this girl walk away. If I did, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Anyway, that's how the person I lost my virginity with happened to be my girlfriend's cousin. And not just any old cousin, but the one she was closest to. Since they were little, Izumi and she had often visited each other. The cousin was at college in Kyoto, and lived in an apartment near the west gate of Gosho, the old imperial palace. Izumi and I went to Kyoto once, so we phoned her up and had lunch together. That was 2 weeks after the little farce with my aunt. While Izumi was away for a few minutes, I asked her cousin for her telephone number, saying I'd like to ask her a few things about college. 2 days later, I called her and asked if I could see her the following Sunday. After a moment's pause, she said, "Okay." Something in her tone of voice made me confident she was hoping to sleep with me too. The following Sunday, I went alone to Kyoto and met her, and by the afternoon, sure enough, we were in bed. For the next 2 months, we had such passionate sex, I thought our brains were going to melt. No films, no walks, no small talk about novels, music, life, war, revolution. All we did was bang away. We must have talked a little, but I can't for the life of me recall what about. All I remember are detailed concrete images, the alarm clock near her pillow, the curtains on the windows, the black phone on the table, the photos on the calendar, and her clothes tossed aside on the floor, and the smell of her skin and her voice. I never asked any questions, and she reciprocated. Just once, though, as we lay in bed, I suddenly wondered aloud whether she was, perhaps, an only child. "That's right," she said with a quizzical look. "But how did you know?" "No particular reason. I just sensed it." She looked at me for a while. "Maybe you're an only child too?" "You've got it," I said. That's all I remember about our conversations. Only rarely did we stop to eat or drink. As soon as we laid eyes on each other, without a word exchanged between us, we'd yank off our clothes, hop into bed, and get at it. I was greedy for what was before my eyes, and so was she. Every time we met, we had sex 4 or 5 times, literally till my juices dried up, and the tip of my cock swelled and ached. Despite the passion and the violent attraction we each felt, it never occurred to either of us that we might want to become long-term lovers. We were in the midst of a whirlwind that would, in time, pass. Knowing this, that each time we met might very well be the last, only fanned the flames of desire that much higher. I wasn't in love with her, and she didn't love me. For me, the question of love was irrelevant. What I sought was the sense of being tossed about by some raging savage force, in the midst of which lay something absolutely crucial. I had no idea what that was, but I wanted to thrust my hand right inside her body and touch it, whatever it was. I liked Izumi a lot, but not once did I experience that irrational power with her. I knew next to nothing about this other girl, yet her effect on me was profound. We never talked seriously about anything because we didn't see the point. If we'd had enough energy to talk, we'd have used it for another round between the sheets. In the normal course of events, we would have been wrapped up in our relationship without pausing to come up for air for a few months, and then one of us would have drifted away. The reason being that what we were doing was a necessary, natural act, one allowing no room for doubt. From the first, there was no possibility that love, guilt, or thoughts of the future would enter in. So if the relationship hadn't been discovered, not to have been found out seems pretty unrealistic, so totally wrapped up was I in having sex with her, Izumi and I might have continued for some time as we had, boyfriend and girlfriend. Whenever summer holidays came around, we'd have gone out together. Who knows how long the friendship would have lasted. But after a few years, one of us would have drifted away. We were too different, and the time would only have magnified our differences. Looking back on it now, it all seems so obvious. Yet even if we had to go our separate ways, if I hadn't slept with her cousin, we might have said goodbye as friends and moved on to the next stage of life in one piece. As it turned out, we couldn't do this. In truth, I damaged Izumi beyond repair. It didn't take much to realize how hurt she was. With her marks, she should have breezed into a top university, but she failed the entrance exam and ended up attending a small, third-rate girls' college. After my relationship with her cousin came to light, I saw Izumi only once. We talked for a long time in a coffee shop that had been one of our hangouts. I tried to explain things to her as honestly as I could, selecting my words carefully, straining to convey my feelings. "This thing between me and your cousin wasn't planned," I said. "It was a physical force that swept us off our feet. It didn't even leave me with the sense of guilt about betraying you that you'd expect me to have. It has nothing to do with us." Of course, Izumi couldn't understand what I meant, and she called me a dirty liar. She was right on target. Without a word, I'd slept with her cousin behind her back. Not just once or twice, but 10, 20 times. I betrayed her from the word go. If I had been acting properly, after all, why the need for deception? I wanted to say this to Izumi. I wanted to sleep with your cousin. I wanted to screw her till my brain's fried 1,000 times, in every position imaginable. It has nothing to do with you. I should have insisted from the start, but I couldn't. That's why I lied, repeatedly. I'd make up some excuse to break a date with her, then race down to Kyoto to screw her cousin. There was no getting around it. I was the one to blame. Izumi found out about us near the end of January, not long after my 18th birthday. In February, I sailed through all the college entrance exams and was going to move to Tokyo at the end of March. Before I left, I called her over and over again, but she wouldn't come to the phone. I wrote her long letters, waiting in vain for a reply. I can't just leave like this, I thought. I can't just leave her here. But I was powerless. Izumi wanted nothing more to do with me. On the bullet train to Tokyo, I gazed listlessly at the scenery outside and thought about myself, who I was. I looked down at my hands on my lap and at my face reflected in the window. Who the hell am I? I wondered. For the first time in my life, a fierce self-hatred welled up inside me. How could I have done something like this? But I knew why. Put in the same position, I would do it all over again. Even if I had to lie to Izumi, I would sleep with her cousin, no matter how much it might hurt Izumi. Recognizing this was painful, but it was the truth. Izumi wasn't the only one to be hurt. I hurt myself deeply, though at the time I had no idea how deeply. I should have learned many things from that experience, but when I look back on it, all I gained was one single, undeniable fact. That ultimately I am a person who can do evil. I never consciously tried to hurt anyone, yet, good intentions notwithstanding, when necessity demanded, I could become completely self-centered, even cruel. I was the kind of person who could, using some plausible excuse, inflict on a person I cared for a wound that would never heal. College transported me to a new town, where I tried, once more, to reinvent myself. Becoming someone new, I could correct the errors of my past. At first, I was optimistic. I could pull it off. But in the end, no matter where I went, I could never change. Over and over again, I made the same mistake, hurt other people, and hurt myself into the bargain. Just after I turned 20, this thought hit me. Maybe I've lost the chance to ever be a decent human being. The mistakes I've committed, maybe they were a part of my very makeup, an inescapable part of my being. I'd hit rock bottom, and I knew it. End of chapter 4.